Okay, good evening, everyone. It is Tuesday, the 27th, and I would like to call this meeting to order with the Board of Education and our Citizenship Advisory Committee consultants on diversity. We will need the approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, very good.
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Sods. Do we have Mr. Moriel with us yet? Okay, so for all of those who are watching, we do have 8 of 9 board members with us on the Zoom call. And Mr. Moriel is wrapping up work for the day, and he will join us shortly. And so what I would like to do is turn it over to our Citizenship on Diversity facilitators. And we have Christina and Yvette here with us. And I will just open this up for discussion following the fact that we, at our last board meeting, the committee presented what their findings in a final report that was made public. So we're here today to have more time with our facilitators to get feedback and be able to have a dialogue with them, considering their expertise and the time with the committee. So I'll do that now. If you'd like to introduce yourself, that would be great.
Thank you so much. My name is Christina Lee. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Paradigm 360 Coaching and Consulting, LLC.
And I'm Yvette Hall, and I'm co-founder and chief operating officer of Paradigm 360. And I'm happy to be here this evening.
We're very happy to see you both. And the one positive of having a Zoom meeting and not in person is that we get to see everyone without a mask over their face. So that's nice today. Yvette, I don't know if you want to go first, since you were at the April meeting when committee members, I believe our principal, Mr. Maxie Johnson, kind of kicked off the presentation from the committee. And I believe, you know, if you want to kind of make an introduction or what you gathered from the April meeting, or if you want to speak towards the final report, we'll just get the discussion started.
Okay, I mean, I'll just kind of for context, since we are streaming, Paradigm 360 had the opportunity to act as facilitators for the process with the Citizens Advisory Committee on Diversity. And we worked with them for, 6 months. So starting in October and culminating at the end of March, of course, with the report that went to the SPTT committee, as well as the presentation at the last board meeting. So I just want to reiterate that our role as consultants was to facilitate an honest and clear, transparent conversation with the folks on the committee around diversity, equity, and inclusion. And the process was very organic in that we started out by building a level of trust and authenticity within the group so that we could get to a place where people felt comfortable sharing their experience in the district. And the committee was comprised, of course, of school district employees and administrators, as well as community members and clergy. And our final report reflects those experiences and those conversations. So while we provided recommendations to the board, those recommendations were the result of that organic conversation. So I hope that gives some context. I'm going to kick it over to Christina just for a little more information. And then we received a list of questions. I don't know, Ms. Merrill, if you would like us to just kind of go from those questions, or we can open it up.
I think
Either way is
so.
fine.
I think we'll let Christina, give her, share her thoughts on what came out of the 6-month time with the committee, and then we'll go straight to the questions. I think that's a great idea.
Wonderful. And I did neglect to mention, I'm sorry, Christina, before you start, I did neglect to mention that we also had the pleasure of working with many students in the process as well. And their input and their participation really helped to ground everybody on kind of our why, right? Why are we here? Why does this matter? And so I'm thankful for those students' participation and the wisdom of the committees, the wisdom of the board in selecting students and ensuring their inclusion in the process. Go ahead, Christina.
Absolutely.
Thank you. First of all, Madam Chair, I want to just thank you, first of all, for seeing the vision. You, the superintendent of schools, the board, it takes a in-touch group to realize the importance of this work. You championed this and spearheaded this. So I want to thank you all publicly for that bravery in such difficult timing in our country. As Yvette has already eloquently stated the outline of how we approached it, I'm gonna jump right into the questions. Again, I think we were very deliberate in building trust. That's what we're known for. That's the work that we do. And strategy is a big part of what we do with organizations across the country. And so we didn't approach this any differently than we would approach any other facilitation process and establishing that trust. I really believe that this group really became in sync by the time it was over. So let's take a look at the questions that were sent to us, where I think these were fantastic questions to be able to hone in on a little bit more clarity. And so the first question was for us to explain why it was the expectation of the committee to hire a senior level chief diversity officer from an internal pool. If created, why not internal? First of all, I think that's a great question. Let me give you, this is my subjective experience in the work that we do. First of all, this is an HR process. So from our position of facilitating, our role is just to simply take the recommendations of what people are suggesting that they feel will somewhat close the gap or help bridge healthy diversity, equity, and inclusion. It is not unusual for a district of your size to have a chief diversity officer. There are other districts in the country that have their focus in that area. In particular, when you're looking at an HR function, there are times when people go outside of the organization to hire for this type of role, because once they run the strategy and the focus groups and realize that this is what they need, if they had the candidate internally, that candidate would have already been in place. Now, that doesn't suggest that you all don't have an internal candidate. And you may have someone that certainly fits the script and can do this work. If so, it was not known by the committee. And so the committee thought that you all would have to do an external search. One of the benefits of doing external search is that the person comes in with a clean sheet of paper and they're able to look at the role very objectively, right? And put policy and procedure and KPIs and benchmarks in place that will help the district scale where they would like to be in the process of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So it was simply a recommendation. It's not something that the district has to do. And I want to make this point too. As we were doing this body of work, we realized the FTE that goes into creating new positions. We were very open with the committee that these things that they collaborated on were not promises. That this did not necessarily ensure that you could not be where they think you should be without these recommendations. So what I mean by that is we could not say to the committee, well, oh yeah, I think that's a good idea and the district should do that. I think what our job was to take their recommendation and to bring it back to you all. And we did talk to them about the fact that sometimes there are barriers and budget restraints that don't allow any organization to make certain types of changes. Doesn't mean that an organization doesn't want to make the change. It just simply means that there may be barriers, there may be restrictions. And so all of that has to be considered in doing this type of work, and particularly when we're suggesting bringing on FTE, because that comes with a monetary price tag. And so I don't know, does that help give a little bit more context? And I'm open for any type of question that may arise from what I've just stated.
I think it certainly helps me, and I'll keep it short in case other board members need to speak, but I really appreciate what you just shared with us, because, you know, in the education arena that we're in, you know, we have a chief financial officer, we have a chief technology officer, and we have a chief academic officer. And we know, you know, when we as board members who actually oversee the budget for the entire district, and it's our names that go to the county to ask for that money, when that's the board's responsibility, that did kind of startle us a little bit for a couple of reasons. One, because our HR department was already working on diversity, equity, and inclusion training from an employee standpoint. So for us, we felt like, okay, well, Dr. Harris in Human Resources, he and his staff are already you know, going to do professional development or training on DEI as an employee perspective. And then we created an entire new department called Student Support Services, and Jared McCraw is our assistant superintendent over those student services. And then, of course, you met his direct report, Dr. Strickland. So from our point of view, instead of asking for this huge salary to, you know, because one of the biggest complaints we get from taxpayers, because we are elected people, one of the biggest complaints that we will hear thrown around real loosely from time to time is that we're too top heavy. You know, we have too many chiefs and, you know, nobody rowing the boat. And so, you know, when we saw the recommendation, we thought, oh my goodness, how in the world are we going to be able to add another chief, you know, and that type of salary, you know, as opposed to like a coordinator or someone that can help student services and someone that can help in HR. Maybe we could work at it with our current structure and figure out a way to, you know, to provide the professional development from a human resources point of view, because they were already, you know, focusing on diversity, equity, and inclusion, which I didn't know until we created this committee. So it was a learning process for me too. I was like, oh, great, we're already doing that. And then when you think about it from a student need, which is what brought us here today, you'll remember, you know, we had seen some Instagram things on, you know, from our students and our alumni, and we're like, you know, wow, you know, I had no idea our students were feeling this way or experience this. And so we feel like maybe we need to be looking at our student support services so that not only our employees are getting educated, but we have a place for our students to go to. So where I sit today, I don't know that the county is going to give us money for that type of position to add a fourth chief. And that doesn't even include Dr. Houlihan, who's not a chief, but anyway, Dr. Houlihan and a fourth chief. So I really appreciate the way you explained it, that, you know, there are budget restraints, and we're in our budget right now. So having this final report helps Kathy and the finance committee see, you know, what we do have or what we don't have. And I'll stop right there for someone else to speak.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Great words. And welcome to our guests,
Thank you.
Miss Christina and
Yes, sir.
Yvette.
Yes, sir.
All right. You spoke of, and I jotted it down. It's dangerous when benching jot something down. That you spoke of that what the committee knew. The years, and I've had, you know, multiple dealings with facilitators, and it's always been my understanding that the facilitators, you know, facilitate and sort of drive the process. There are times when they allow the various committees that they're facilitating to brainstorm amongst themselves. But wouldn't it have been good for maybe some questions that could have come from you all as facilitators to back to say staff or whatever, when questions in the committees or whatever came up, just to kind of get an idea of where things could be. You know, we provided a liaison person for you all, and because it's I'm like the chair. What hearing your articulation right now, Miss Christina, hearing how you articulately laid out your thinking, your processes. It wasn't until Miss Yvette at the meeting said that we're not saying things are all bad here in the county. But that was, as the chairs pointed out, kind of like the building blocks of, we need to just kind of take this ship and just, you know, kind of just, tear it down and rebuild it in a sense. And so hearing your articulation today really provides what I believe was missed, you know, maybe even a missed opportunity at our board meeting, had you all been there to lead that way. And I believe that would have swayed mindsets and thinkings on the part of the board members. Because if you're coming, as I just heard you say, with the understanding that though these are things that you have felt in your line of work to make things better, you just described to us that you understand that everybody's not going to always be able to do or carry out those types of things. And it's not because, you know, they don't want to. It's not because they're not serious, but it's because of other factors, from financial factors to staff factors, whatever the situation. And I think that's putting a whole nother, for me, light on the situation. So my question is, was there back and forth between you as facilitators, the committee, and the liaison to get some of these things answered, so that as you build your building blocks, you could have been building it not with what you want to be, but one from aspects of what is?
Thank you for your question. Couple of things I want to clear up. We were there. At the time that Yvette entered the building, she was asked to go into the overflow. So that's why she went there. When we started doing this work earlier, we were instructed that the committee would deliver the report. we were to coach and facilitate them through that. There was never any conversation that we were the ones to deliver that to the board. So I want to really clear that up, because we're quite capable of delivering the information, but the structure was that the committee would present at the board meeting, and that's the way it morphed. It kind of morphed into that conversation. So we would have been more than happy, Mr. Benson, to do that. This is the work that we do daily. And and we're quite accustomed to delivery, but we wanted to follow the first conversations. And Ms. Mural, I want to make sure, Madam Chair, that I'm not misspeaking, that we did talk about the committee delivering, being able to deliver the information at the board meeting, and that we would be in attendance. But then, of course, we were asked to go to, or Yvette was, to
So
the
what,
overflow.
so we are where we are. And we're here today speaking with the facilitator, but in my memory, I always wanted this. So before we contacted you, back in 2017, 18, we had a Citizens Advisory Committee on realignment. So I had hoped to model that experience with that demographer. That was the consultant. We used a consultant, and his expertise was demography. And so, birth rates, migration in and out, basically how many students do we need to educate? And so, in my mind, we were always going to model CAC on diversity after that experience, where the demographer came to the board with the committee's findings.
Okay.
And so, so I think there was a breakdown in communication, maybe between me, maybe you, Dr. Strickland, but I do recall always saying that I wanted to model CAC on diversity the way we did realignment. And the way we did realignment is that the demographer came and gave the final presentation and made his recommendations on where we should move kids.
Okay.
But again, we are where we are. We're here. And I think because we really did want to hear you articulate from your professional experience. We hired you because of your resume. And so so that is precisely why I think it is very fair that the committee got to have their voice at the April meeting, and we gave them the time to be heard, which is what they wanted. They wanted to present their findings, which tells me that they were owning it. They owned it, they were proud of it, and they brought us the information. But the board really wants to hear from you. So after we
absolutely.
After we heard from them, the conclusion we came to is, okay, just like CAC realignment, let's go back and let's wrap this up with a bow with the consultant. And here, so we've heard from the committee, and now, we want to hear from you, and you've already articulated things we did not hear at the April meeting that really puts our minds to ease, because I know the first thing I thought is, oh my gosh, where are we going to find the money to do all this?
No, I certainly, and I think to your point, Madam Chair, we consistently explained to the board that much of this had a monetary price tag, and that we could not put these types of deliverables on the district, but our role was to facilitate, gather the information, the data, and present to you what the committee felt. And we were very clear about that. And I want to just also answer Mr. Benson's Second question, we were very thankful to have Dr. Strickland. She was incredible. She attended much of the, many of the portions that we did and conducted. She was there. We constantly were in constant contact with Dr. Strickland, and it is, as coaches, Mr. Benchin, it is our custom to always debrief. Not only did we debrief with the committee before we ended every call, we did a debrief with Dr. Strickland to find out, how did you think things went? Here's the tempo. How are you feeling? We made sure that we never met with any student outside of a Union County Public School administrator. So she was a part of all of the meetings with the children. So we were very calculated in how we presented ourselves and conducted ourselves in terms of how we facilitated this process. And so thank you for asking that question, because I think that's an excellent question and it definitely deserves a response. So thank you, Mr. Benchin. I really appreciate that.
Would everyone be comfortable moving to number 2, the second question? Or do you want to, does anyone else want to speak?
I have a question. First of all, thank you ladies for being on here tonight, this evening rather. I think that, and I'm listening to what we're saying, and I'm not going to prolong it, but we did not ask this first question. We did not ask the committee this question, I don't believe, in order for us to get clarity on it. So I think it's unfair to say that, to make it seem as though we didn't understand or we didn't get the answer when we didn't ask them the question. Now, maybe I can't remember, but I don't remember us asking them number 1 or anything along those lines. So, I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong, committee members. And so I'm saying, because it sounds as though those individuals who were the representatives, that we just left and we didn't understand nothing they were talking about. But we really didn't get a chance to specifically ask questions, because some of them were asked questions that they were not comfortable answering. And the suggestion was made for the entire committee to meet. The entire committee to meet so that we can hear from all of them. And we know that Miss Christina and Miss Yvette, they are the consultants, but at the end of the day, the heart was speaking from those who are on that committee. And so I'm appreciative that they are here, but still, I think this is a very unfair setting, because we're not hearing from the ones whose hearts were speaking in that committee. And
I disagree, Reverend Kirkpatrick.
And that's fine, because as I mentioned a weeks ago in my email, if y'all remember, I said we can disagree and still respect one another. So it's perfectly fine.
Because the committee is the one who drove the train at the April meeting. So in my mind, we heard from the committee. They actually had meetings before the April meeting. And it was that final report was the committee's final report. Okay. And so when we're talking about number 1, they presented to us at the April meeting that their recommendation out of their committee was to hire a chief diversity officer at cabinet level.
But we never asked them why they felt that should have been an external decision.
I guess in my book, they started with, they weren't going to take questions. And I think that was difficult to get over that hump. They asked us not to ask questions. And I think that was what this process right now is about.
Okay.
I agree. They said
I did speak to
that they would not take questions, which, you know, as a non-member board, we're there to ask questions the first Tuesday of every month.
Which is true.
Yeah, and I personally addressed that issue. I just been thinking of, because I think I spoke in terms of why would we need this person when we have, you know, the people here. I think I'm remembering some segments of that that I did address that that concern. But as the chair stated, yeah, they they presented their report, so we did hear from them. It's not as if we did not hear from the committee, but this is structured in such a way that we didn't hire the committee. We appointed members to the committee to be facilitated by. Now, if we had a self-facilitating committee, that would be one thing. But Union County taxpayers pay for these two experts here to formulate with the committee and to come back with a conclusion. And for what we paid for on the night of our meeting isn't all, we didn't get all that we paid for. We're beginning to get it tonight because we're hearing directly from them, because they're the experts. The committee isn't the expert. You're right, and I love how you phrase it, Pastor Kirkpatrick, about the committee is the heart, and the committee spoke, but now we need the brains of that heart, if you will, the brains of that body that facilitated all of those gatherings to come and present it in such a way that we have final clarity.
I agree with you. I think
that yes, they are the brains and they are very significant in this process, absolutely. But at the end of the day, you cannot consult if you don't have a group of people who you need to hear from in order to be able to consult. So I'm not trying to prolong this meeting because we have more questions that need to be answered. And I do want to hear from Miss Christina and Miss Yvette. And so, but I digress and continue.
Can I say one thing too? Some of us thought that this process was going to be like the Citizens Advisory Committee for the realignment. Every single one of theirs was live streamed to anybody who wanted to watch them. So we didn't get involved in the process, but we could see the process so that we understood where things were going along. And we didn't have that access on this one so that we could see the process as it went along. So at the end, we need to ask questions because we didn't see the process. Does that make sense?
That's an excellent point, because and we really need so when we did realignment, because that was live streamed and open to the public, we were able to see the committee members exchange information and work through information, and we were actually able to see them vote on decisions. And I believe that was one of the questions that we'll get to is, did everyone agree? There's a whole page full of names here. I haven't added it up, but let's say there's 30 or 40 names here of people that served on the committee. And, did all 30 or 40 believe we needed someone at the senior cabinet level, or was that how was that vote taken? So during realignment, we know how the votes went when it came to a final report. On this one, since it wasn't open to the public, and we do have to remember we're in the middle of COVID, so there are reasons why we had social distancing and a limit on capacities at the PDC, but I think that's why we do have some questions, is because we don't know where exactly the committee, everyone on the committee was coming from. So that's why we wanted to talk to you. And I'm just going to say again, we have heard from the committee. They presented, and I'm not sure if we gave them an hour or how much time we gave them at the April meeting, but I want it on the record that we did hear from the heart. We got their final report, and we allowed them to speak, something that we did not allow the Citizens Advisory Committee on Realignment.
And I was on that committee, and I know I didn't speak.
If there aren't any other questions, can we move to number 2? Could someone speak to the transparency and provide a clear policy and information to students, parents, and community and staff, in addition to what we are currently doing? What would be some specific recommendations from Christina and Yvette based on, you know, their personal time with the committee? How would you respond to that?
So thank you, Madam Chair, for that question. In terms of transparency, the sense was that there were people who know what the policies are and have access to the information, and there are others who don't. I don't think there is the thought that it is intentionally withheld, but rather, as you mentioned, how many people know that there's an office now of diversity, equity, and inclusion?
No, there's not an office, but there's a department called Student Services. And then, of course, we have HR that's doing DEI training.
My apologies, but there certainly was within the committee a broad range of who knows what.
Mm-hmm.
And so there may be a way to be more transparent in the sharing and communication of what's happening, particularly around this area.
Which, you know, I will tell you was kind of shocking to learn of it. And I absolutely perceived what you just said, that some people knew and some people didn't know. That is absolutely my takeaway. Mm-hmm. Which was kind of shocking because we had a former board member serving on this committee, and they know exactly where our policy is located on. It's a public document on the UCPS website. So if anybody didn't know how to find a policy, or, you know, I would have hoped that someone in the committee spoke up and said, oh, it's on the website. You know, this is where you find the board policy.
Yeah, I think it's not that the committee wasn't able to find information when they needed it. Certainly, okay, there was a broad range and depth of knowledge on the committee. However, right, if the perspective is of the, you know, perhaps it's my sphere of friends, mm-hmm, right? I have a 6th grader. I have a group of friends who all have 6th graders, and a lot of people don't know the information. So it wasn't that the people on the committee necessarily didn't know, although there was variation in that. I think the representation was speaking for the community that they represented. I hope that gives you some clarity.
It does. Board members, do you have any follow-up on number 2 about the transparency and policy? You know, I liken number 2 to a good marriage or a bad marriage. And it comes down to one thing: communication. And, you know, so maybe we just need to, when I walked away from the April meeting, it was like, well, we have this, we're doing this, but not everybody knew it.
Right.
So I think, you know, it just boils down to making sure that stakeholders know that when they have a question or can't find something, that they need to speak up and go ask for it and say, oh, well, let me show you where that is. Or who to call, or, you know, who to go to make sure, you know, we had a student who shared, you know, a very shocking example in the meeting. We're like, wow, you know, well, did they go to the principal? Nobody knows. But who was supporting those students in the classroom to follow it all the way through and to make sure that, everything happened and was communicated? Ms. Heintel?
So I think this goes along with the very last question, which is, no, I'm sorry. And that's number 7. Was there any attempt to educate the members of the committee, particularly the committee members that were either from the faith-based partners or the community members that don't have any kids in the district or have never had any kids in the back, to tell them some stuff about the district that would help them with, particularly with programming, it says, resources and facilities? Was there ever any time where Dr. Strickland or anybody kind of explained things, where things were, where you can get was there any of that?
There was certainly exchange amongst the members of the committee.
Okay.
We have people on the committee who were, again, quite adept at finding data and sharing that data.
Okay.
But again, if you weren't privy to those committee members, committee meetings, if you weren't part of the committee, then there's a whole segment or segments of the community that perhaps don't know how to get that information. And that was more the concern than the committee members themselves.
So I will tell you, the thing that I took away, something that has worked really well in our district, was when we talked our superintendent, who really likes Twitter, that we needed to do some Facebook Live, that if we really wanted to reach our customer, which is, our parents and our students and our taxpayers, they're not on Twitter. All of the educators are on Twitter talking to each other, but the parents, I would say 95, 99% of our parents are not on Twitter. So if that's where the superintendent is sharing information, then 95% of our customers aren't getting the information. So with that being said, a year or two ago, we started doing Facebook Live, and people could send in their questions, or if they were having trouble, like parents didn't know how to navigate Canvas or to get to their students' assignments or to their students' grades in Power School. We, from time to time, we held Facebook Live sessions where people could send in their questions and we could, answer it. And so I think, we're going to have to do stuff like that around as a follow-up around this final report too. Might be a good idea to help start getting the word out. So if someone said, do you have any DEI training in Union County Public Schools? Boom, HR could speak up and tell us what they are or are not doing or what they're looking into.
Quick question to our facilitators. Did you all feel as though, and from everyone talking, this question bubbled up. Do you feel as though that you received enough data information concerning Union County Public Schools to provide as well as a facilitation as you would have wanted to?
Yes, I believe so. First of all, we had a very wonderful in-depth conversation with your board chair in the beginning. I think she did a beautiful job of sharing her heart, and also the assistant chair was there as well, and your superintendent. We went into this work, Mr. Benson, with a clean sheet of paper. That's the way we approach every conversation. We were very clear with the committee that we did not have a side to take. That's not our role as coaches. It's not our role as a facilitator. Matter of fact, I remember distinctively on the last night that we met, someone asked us, are we on their side? And I remember saying to the committee, we can't take a side. We were hired by Union County Schools. That's exactly what I said, that we are hired by Union County Schools. We work for the school in this contract. We are here to facilitate a discussion. In terms of gathering information, everything that we would normally do as a data point, that is what we did to collect the information that we received. And I think Madam Chair just did a beautiful job of addressing what one could see as inequitable. She said that Twitter was a big part of your communication, but there are some demographics that may not be on Twitter. She did a beautiful job from a DEI perspective of doing what we did. She simply explained that in order to be equitable across the district, that you all would have to use other mediums. That is a DEI strategy. And so we simply led them in conversations that would hopefully then come back to you all, as the committee reported, that would then lead to conversations that would then open up discussions for strategy. In our work, Mr. Benchin, we never give a report and think that it is a final report, in the sense that the stakeholders in whom we're giving that to, it is then up to them to go back and strategize around what is feasible. We heard from our group, what is feasible from a deliverable, where do we stand? And I want to share with you that this committee loves this district. They were not ganging up on this district. These people, they care about Union County schools, and they never said anything that misrepresented or even painted the district out to look anything other than who you are, which is one of the top school districts in our state. I just want to be very clear about that. And I think the reason that they were able to do that is because of the level of trust and authenticity that we were able to build in the beginning, which gave them a safe platform to say what they felt, as well as to make certain that they said it from a space that we love our school district, and that's why we're here. And I just want to make that clear, that it wasn't a hit on the district and that the district is doing, it was a really good facilitation process. And I felt like it was healthy. We're coaches, we facilitate, we ask questions, open-ended questions, help get people to where they want to be. Much of the work was done in their teams and in their groups in a software that we utilized, that Yvette has, that she can demonstrate that and show that, so that you could see the high collaboration. It wasn't a setting like this. The setting was, they worked collaboratively in teams, then they reported out, and then they and out of those report outs, they were able to see that many of the cases in their collaboration, it was cross information. The same, one group may say the same thing, but it was all in, I would say, good taste. And it was never any hostility, and they truly care about Union County Public Schools.
Your articulation is exuberating to hear you outline it in such fashion. And so I appreciate that, because one of the things that I am is I'm a problem solver, but I don't go around trying to solve problems where problems don't exist. There's a problem that exists. I want to solve it. I want to solve it with the best people possible. And so thank you for your sincere clarity of your views of what you witnessed. Thank you so kindly.
Thank you, Mr. Benchin.
One of the things that jumped out to me as far as transparency, or the district not being transparent, or the board not being transparent, that really stood out to me, is the fact that a lot of people probably just don't know our recent history, because prior to 2016 or 2017, none of our committee meetings were streamed live. So I remember when Mr. Morial and Mr. Helms and Mrs. Heintel were elected to serve on the board, and I was already there from 2014. We said, look, we need to put it in the budget. We're going to put audio, camera equipment, and we need to completely retrofit the Professional Development Center so that community members, parents, taxpayers, anyone that wants to either attend our meetings live, or if they're sitting in Uptown Charlotte in a high rise somewhere, that by the click of a button, they could take a break wherever they are and listen in on finance, budgets, curriculum, policy, transportation. So, so this 9-member board, we take a lot of pride, which that's mistake number one. Let's go ahead and be honest about that. But we've taken a lot of pride in the fact that that our number one goal since 2016 is to make Union County Public Schools transparent. And we put money where our mouth is, and we made that happen by making all of our meetings, all of our comments, all of our meetings, who voted yes, who voted no, who said what. It's all live stream now, and up until 2016-17, that didn't exist. So, so I just want to put that out there that, we're doing everything we can to be transparent, and we feel like we're being transparent. But if someone feels that we're not being transparent, then they need to contact the board and let us know what else we need to be doing.
Thank you.
I made the point the other night at the board meeting that if anyone so much as stubs their toe and feel as though it was because of some form of unfairness, let people know. Because I found, as I listened at our board meeting on the 13th, I believe it was, one of the things that I kept settling in my spirit was they simply want to be heard.
Right.
And they were heard that night. I know I heard them. And it was heard so loudly that one of the teachers that I responded to that sent a negative email, all those emails that came for another issue, I replied back to each of them, and one invited me to come to her class. And she said, I believe you will learn so much if you spend a day in our classroom. And I did that last Tuesday, I believe it was. And I was a 7th grader, Dr. Houlihan. I even raised my hand and asked questions. And so, as the chair says, we care about the district to the point that we're willing to put our money, our time, and our efforts where our mouth is to make it better. So I'm not adverse to making changes. I just want to make sure that the changes we make are needed changes and not feel-good changes.
I think the community would be very pleasantly surprised if they reached out to any one of our 9 board members and invited them to have a conversation. I know that at the beginning of the year with all of, the COVID conversations, what we should be doing, shouldn't be doing, in person, all online, whatever, I'm just going to share. I got into a really tough conversation with one of our teachers. And once I said my piece and once she said her piece, we met. And I could not have been more honored to have sat down in that classroom and visited, and then to be taken around the school to meet more of, the teachers and stuff. I love this school district, and it is a complete honor to sit on this board with the 8 other people on this board, because I have so much respect for my colleagues. And I just want the public to know that you have board members that are 100% in this game. And if we were crazy enough to stick around through all this COVID stuff, if that isn't proof enough that we don't love what we do, and we love our employees, and we love our students, and we're willing to do this for $400 a month before taxes, and see this through. I just think the community would be very pleasantly surprised if we would just treat each other like human beings and not villains, and have a conversation.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
If I may, I don't think that, and I can't speak for everybody. I'm the newest one on the board, Miss Christina and Miss Yvette. So they've been on here doing the work much longer than I have. But I'm a firm believer. Prior to me being on the board, I worked within the school system from Charlotte Mecklenburg as well as Union County. So I have been able to see firsthand the atmosphere of a school system. All right. And so I think that it's not that anyone is saying that the school system is just terribly awful, but one thing that my grandmother taught me, the biggest room in the whole wide world is the room of improvement. And so there are some areas that the school system has to improve. I heard Reverend Benson make mention that from the previous meeting that we had, that it seems as though they were attacking. That's not what I perceived in the meeting. I perceived a group of individuals who have investment in what they do, being able to dialogue with others and express concerns and see where we can do better as a school system from the western part of Union County to the eastern part of Union County. When the young lady gave the example of what a teacher said to her in that classroom, all right, and we asked the question, well, did she tell a principal? The truth of the matter is, it should have never gotten to that place where she had to tell a principal anything that an authoritative figure said disrespecting her religion. Point blank period. I am a Christian, yes I am, but I have friends who are Muslims. I have associated people that I know who are Hindu, and I understand that in this world that we live in, it is a diverse world, and we have to learn how to work together and live together. That's why when you go to seminary, they don't just teach you about Christianity, they teach you about different religions so you will understand how to communicate with one another. So I think that we're, because when we talk about transparency, you cannot be transparent and not be honest. And I don't think that some of us are really being honest about the state of our school district. I don't think that we are, because when we look at it, there are things that we need to improve in. There are things that we need to work on. There are things that need to be better. And it's okay that if we see it, if parents see it, if teachers see it, it's okay. Your house, I don't care if you build it brand new today. Next year, there may be some things from a storm that may come and do whatever, and you're going to have to improve it. It doesn't mean that your house is a terrible house. It just means that it needs to be improved. And so I'm not understanding why it's hard for us to look at these concerns. And again, I go back to saying I stand on it. We should have heard from the rest of those committee members, even though just a few of them came and were in there as the representatives. They all could have been on this Zoom call and we could have asked questions and we could have been able to hear more from them, all right? But I'm not understanding why it's such a struggle for us to embrace this proposal if we hired these consultants and they have done a phenomenal job, and we created this committee to tell us what they see, what they feel, and to hear their heart from a student's perspective, from a religious leader's perspective, from an educator's perspective. I honestly believe that they believe in what they're doing in this school system. And I feel like there's some backlash coming, because the truth of the matter is, and I'm gonna say it, and you may not like it or not, but change is not always something we like to do. As a pastor, change is not always something I like to do. As a husband, change is not something that I always like to do. So
Reverend Kirkpatrick, I hear everything you're saying, and I hear your heart. I see your heart, what you're trying to say.
no,
But,
I'm saying it. I'm not trying to say it, Madam President.
I will challenge you if you think there's a board member that's lying or not being honest or transparent. And I will challenge you to know that we would have never hired these consultants if we didn't want to have the conversation.
Well, the thing about it is, if the person who I am talking to is saying something or what have you, if I'm saying something and if it doesn't apply to you, then there's no reason to respond, Madam Chair. And that's not being disrespectful, that's being honest. I made an overall observation. And at the end of the day, I have not spoken to each and every one of you, but I do know within any committee, any organization, any group, there's always going to be one or two individuals that may have some backlash on what is being presented. So no, I have not specifically said an individual, but I do know the culture of groups and organizations that everyone is not going to agree on the same thing. So that is my point.
I appreciate Madam Chair speaking to that, but my question would simply be to Pastor Kilpatrick, is what is the items or item of concern that you have, whether they are self-generated concerns from yourself, or whether they are concerns that were brought up by the committee, or concerns brought up by the citizenry in which you represent. I would be more than willing, just like I'm sure that teacher was shocked when I accepted her invitation to come. I would be more than willing to hear your concerns that are concerns of yours, again, wherever they bubbled up from, because I'm not afraid of change, but change for the sake of change is no change at all.
Absolutely.
So we want to make sure that when we go down the road of change, that we have something to change. And I will tell you that these two, this is why I brought up that we hired the facilitators, and all expectation was that we would have heard, they would have led the way at our meeting, to present, with the committee standing by to answer ancillary questions that we may have. But, by us hiring them and hearing from them, and the presentation that we're getting today is not the presentation from the meeting. It has another flavor. And so I would be very interested in hearing those poignant concerns, because we have the facilitators on with us right now and we paid them so we can be the beneficiaries of whatever wisdom that they have that could answer some of the questions that you have, so that we will be able to, even on this call right now, address those concerns. I'm all about that.
I am too. So I'd like to wrap up number 2, and I'll kick it off this way. In addition to what we are currently doing, what would be some specific recommendations to this board? So Yvette and Christina, we have, the board has different committees that each one of us serve on with staff. We have a policy committee, we have curriculum, we have strategic planning, technology and transportation, finance, and what one did I miss, guys? Curriculum, finance, facilities, I've got them all. So we disperse and we go to these committees and we work with cabinet staff and our employees. And so in my mind, and which I spoke at the very first meeting when we all got together many months ago, is that I see how we can take the report and hand it off to the superintendent and have him and his staff convene and say, you know, what pieces of this final report and these 3 recommendations could we take and own? And the board members can say, well, I can go to policy and we can have this discussion, or I can go to curriculum and have this discussion. So when I see the question, specific recommendations, that's what comes to my mind. But I would appreciate hearing from Yvette and Christina if you have any recommendations on where we take it from here.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I think you did a beautiful job teeing that up. In most cases, when we facilitate, that's exactly what happens, that it goes back to the entity in which hired us, and they make the determination based on their constraints, their constructs, their barriers, their possibilities as what will happen next. To answer your question, if we were engaged in a change management around this DEI initiative, there would be further conversation, but I could say to you just this, that without any change management conversation, that you all are doing much of what was uncovered, as you have stated so eloquently. I would say that my recommendation would be that there is a formal and communication plan implemented around diversity, equity, and inclusion so that people can know the temperament and know exactly what's going on in the district. That's what my recommendation would be based on the conversation that we're having at this time. If I were the change management expert in this situation. Now, there's a whole lot of components to change management, and it's unfair for us to offer a ton of recommendations with only talking to one side, being the committee, when we've not had an opportunity to interview stakeholders who are in the day-to-day internal process, being HR. There's a whole gamut that goes on between change management. We're change management practitioners. That's what we do for a living. And so our job was to work with the committee. But based on what you've shared tonight, as it relates to how eloquently you talked about just Twitter and Facebook, just that shift, the fact that in 2016, you all went virtual and live with all of your meetings. Now, even if 50% of the committee knew that, the question is, how is your communication plan across the district getting throughout the corridors of the homes that you serve? So this isn't bad. This isn't a bad problem. It's just a problem. And it simply is a problem that can be, I would say, handled in a way in which I think all of the viewers tonight can see the favorable response from the district. I started off by saying your heart was unprecedented in the way that you spoke to us about this initiative. I heard your heart. We led with your heart, Madam Chair. That was one of the reasons why we could be so equitable in this work, because we could come from a framework of knowing exactly what Union County Public Schools wanted. And I think across the board, if you interview anyone, Dr. Strickland, she'll tell you that. So I think that a lot of this is just simply, there needs to be some type of major communication plan around your DEI initiative. You spoke eloquently about the 2 entities, one being student services, another being an HR component that is already in the throes. That information had never been given to us. We could not facilitate information we did not know. And so we didn't know that. And I think you had mentioned just earlier that you had just recently found out that those things were happening yourself. So there were some things that we went into this facilitation not being briefed on. And so if we're not briefed on it, we can only talk from the perspective of the information that is being unearthed in the facilitation process in which we were hired to govern. And so now that we hear this with good integrity, I'm not suggesting that you hire a chief diversity officer if you have the components in place. A title does not change equitable and inclusivity. People change, equity and inclusivity, right? Not the title. So you all, I'm sure, have some more than competent individuals that will be able to unearth this. But I think without the discussions from the committee, we wouldn't have been able to be here today to champion this level of conversation. And I think some of them who are watching tonight may be getting some of their answers, their questions answered as well, as it relates to how you all have already started to approach some of these things. There just wasn't a communication plan, it sounds as if to me, and if I'm misspeaking on that, I sincerely ask for your apologies. But that would be my recommendation, and I hope that holds.
That is a very good recommendation, to have a formal, communications. If anyone, does anyone have any comments around that, or are we ready to move to the third question that was submitted?
I think what the communication point that you just spoke to, I think might be a point that could, help bring about some of the questions that, Pastor Kilpatrick has, because if we can communicate some of the things I believe that he's speaking about tonight, if I'm hearing him correctly, he wants to make sure that these things are in fact addressed. And I stand with him, on that point. But I want to make sure that we are addressing those true concerns that's going to indeed make our district better.
Absolutely.
So I appreciate you, Ms. Christina, and Chair, for laying that process.
I kind of envision that, the board's going to ask the superintendent and his team to, take a dive and dig into this final report and the 3 recommendations. The board will do the same, and we will work with our superintendent and see, what we can or cannot, do, whether it's tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, phased in approach, and then absolutely communicate it to our stakeholders. This is what we can do now. This is what we're already doing. This is what we're going to do, this quarter, next year. And I think it just boils down to communication.
Madam Chair, you stated that eloquently. I distinctively remember telling the committee, as Yvette and I do this type of work daily, any type of change management initiative is going to take 24 to 36 months. Change does not, you can't take a tractor trailer and turn a sharp corner. You can't drive a tractor trailer like you drive a sports car. And it takes time. And so again, I think you're on par when much of what these recommendations that you see as you all comb through this with a fine tooth comb will have to be placed in some type of strategic plan that the district decides. And then you all will make your internal recommendations and come up with your solutions based on what your budget and monetary restrictions are, and your core values, policies, and belief systems. And again, these were simply the feeling of the committee. However, at the end of the day, I think the district has to make that final call. And so you're right. No real change is going to happen next month. It's anytime you're doing change management, it's at least a 24 to 36 month until we start to see any type of sustainability in our practices.
See, that right there helps me so much, because we've been thrown into this COVID, nightmare where Dr. Houlihan, cabinet staff, our teachers, administrators, and yes, this board, every single one of us has been drinking by a fire hose since last March. And so, again, I am so thankful that we are having this conversation with you and Yvette tonight, because this is your expertise. And to hear you say that this takes time.
Oh my gracious, yes, absolutely.
And this isn't something we can fix, on a dime, and it will take 12, 24, 36 months. I mean, you can't even imagine the burden you just lifted off of my shoulders, that, unlike COVID, we have to have a virtual academy tomorrow.
Right.
So I really appreciate hearing you share that expertise with us, because I didn't know that.
And to piggyback on number one, the Chief Diversity Officer, in the conversation, that role is designed to keep their pulse on nothing but DEI.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't a hit on the district. It was after we get our initial plan and the district puts in whatever things they'd like to put in, how do we continue to measure if we're equitable? And all of those things stem from policy, climate, right? When we talk about economics, different things like that. But your DEI person, in this case, your support services and your HR, someone would have their hand on that pulse to make sure that we're consistently looking at the data, making certain that in our PDs that we're being equitable. Who's measuring that? All of those types of things are what we talk about, measured results. Now we're getting into a change management, and that's not really what we were hired to do. As coaches, we were hired to extrapolate information, conversation, and get data. We were getting, our job was to get the data. And so we got the data that based on what the committee says, but it wasn't for us to offer recommendations for change as much as it was for us to facilitate the conversation. And so that was the approach that we took. But you have unearthed this so beautifully as well. And I want to thank you, Madam President, or Madam Chair, for doing such a wonderful job in your communicating to me on this.
Well, I love talking to you, Christina, because you have helped me take my understanding of Chief Diversity Officer, whether that's the title or not the title, but the need. I love the way you said to keep a pulse. Mm-hmm. For our employees to have someone to go to, for our students to have someone to go to, someone that always knows what the pulse of Union County Public Schools is. So I'm taking a lot of notes, and so I really like that. If you don't mind, if it's the pleasure of the board, I'm going to move to the next question, if that's okay. Okay. The next question that was submitted said, could someone give an example of what policy we would look like to hold faculty, staff, and administrators accountable for upholding the values of diversity?
So that came out of a discussion around, again, in many organizations, what that quote unquote diversity person, the person's leading diversity within your organization, mm-hmm. How would they keep the district relevant in how we approach diversity, equity, and inclusion? And so policy is something that you all will have to determine. Mm-hmm. That's also in conjunction with your HR department. Even in a change management situation, Yvette and I could never tell an organization what policy to write, nor have we ever done that. That conversation morphs out of strategy. It morphs out of where the organization is now, where would the organization like to be in the future? And based on that, you develop a set of core values, mm-hmm. And key competencies. And here's what this really is about, Madam Chair. It's about when we make major decisions, and this is some of the conversations that we had, when major decisions are made, are we looking at them through the lens of equity? So for example, if I hire a person in a wheelchair, because I simply want to check the box of being ADA compliant, but I never build a ramp. I'm not equitable, and neither am I inclusive. So it is the responsibility of the district and HR to say, when we make hires, when we change policy, are we changing them, filtering them through the lens? Are we filtering them through the lens of our diversity, equity, and inclusion? Because that's something that we've committed to. And that was where that conversation came from.
Okay. So I agree with you. I think we've touched on that. We're going to let the superintendent and his team take a dive into this, and then we can, the policy committee can work on it. Strategic planning can take some information and work on it. So I definitely think we can send this out to the committees, because every month, I can only speak for policy. I know every month in policy, we're looking, okay, what new policies that have come from the federal level, and we talk about it. What new state policies have come down that we need to adopt? And then, with DEI, now that we've dedicated 6 months of committee members' time, and we have recommendations every month when we're updating our own policies monthly. We can take a look at this through is there something from a DEI perspective that could be added to this policy? So for example, Christina, each month, like we might go through chapter 3. And so we might spend a few months on chapter 3. Well, when we're going through chapter 3, what did we learn from CAC on diversity that we could add to chapter 3? And then chapter 4, chapter 5, and then we start all the way back over, the next year on chapter 1. So I definitely think this is doable for sure. Any board members have any comments around that going in that direction?
Yeah, that leads me to, to believe that great change, like long-term change, may fall in that 24, 36 month. But there are things that we can do instantly once we find out, maybe through a policy change. We don't have to think that we need months and months and months to work through a concern. But if we see that there is wrong, and that's what I meant by being a problem solver, we see that there's something wrong immediately. What can we do in the here and now to fix that? Whether it's through the diversity, equity, and inclusion, or whether it's just through fixing a wrong and making it a right.
Yeah. So I think this, we're really going to challenge our board members that whatever committee you serve on, we need to make sure that at least one of those board members, every agenda is looking, through that lens to see if there's something that we can improve upon in each committee. If it's okay, I'm going to move to the 4th question. How does one create an equitable reputation of communities on the Board of Education when we are elected officials from our communities?
So that was a question, and absolutely everybody realizes that is legislative, and that there's likely not a lot of flexibility around that. But the heart of the concern was simply that based on the elected Board of Education, there is less representation of certain political parties just based on the makeup of the county. So I think that at the heart of that, it's not so much that the representation is problematic, it's that The other voices want to make sure that there is a venue to be heard. And again, that may exist, but that was the conversation. So if there are 9 elected officials and 7 happen to be Democratic, well, then there's no Republican or there's much less Republican representation, right? And that may not be a party-specific issue. It could be just value system issue. I mean, we don't really say specifically, but we do recognize, and the committee absolutely recognize, that it's not like you all have necessarily the ability to just change the election laws or the legislative environment.
Yeah.
One of the things that I created in my file system is a file I call Voice of the Citizens. The answer to that concern is that when a citizen should not allow perceived stumbling blocks to get in the way of questions that they have. And if they don't get over those stumbling blocks or just simply ask their questions, all of our emails are public. We are here to serve. And I will say to all that are listening, what I was going to say earlier was, Madam Chair, I think one of the ways even the committee can communicate some of their concerns that Pastor Kilpatrick had is that they can email us concerns. You know, there's nothing precluding any of those committee members from emailing us their concerns. That's how you can bridge that gap of the perceived blockage of equity on an elected board. You go to your representative, regardless of what party that representative is. That's your representative, and we need to make sure that piece of education is known.
Absolutely. And what I will say to that end is, you know, speaking as an elected official, and I have, you know, been elected and reelected since 2014, I could care absolutely less what someone's political affiliation is when they call and want to talk to me about their child's bus stop, or they want to call and talk to me about school choice, or you know, whether they should be on plan A, plan B, plan D, or if they're having trouble with a teacher or a coach. Political affiliation is the very last thing on my radar when someone emails me or calls me and needs help for their student. I could care absolutely less who they voted for. But what I have noticed is that there are people in our community that is politics they only focus on, and they will not reach out to a board member because of their political affiliation or whatever. And at the end of the day, we can only assist and help those who are willing to talk to us, email us, or call us. And I can say with almost positive, without having the other board members speak up or not speak up, and I would actually ask you to speak up, because I know we have board members right now who really have been crucified by the public, especially during realignment, and neighborhoods were being shifted and moved around. And we have board members that, you know, would meet one-on-one with every one of those parents about their concerns, knowing that that parent was not going to be happy with the answer. So I just go back, if you don't reach out to speak and to work with your elected officials when you think something is wrong, if you're not willing to have a human to human conversation, email us, call us, then we don't even know there's a problem to fix unless you contact us.
We can't fix what we don't know.
And when we're drinking by a fire hose with all of our different committees and appeals hearings and budgets and working with our legislators in Raleigh, our county commissioners, until you bring your issue to our attention, we're off putting out another fire. But we are more than happy to drop whatever we're doing to go help a parent or a student with any problem, that they're having in a school. I've seen it since 2014. The people that are sitting on this Zoom meeting right now, I know that if a parent reached out to them or a student reached out to them, we would drop our own family needs to go assist that family. Are there any other input, board members, on number 4? The 5th question that was sent in for tonight was about gate sharing for athletics. Sharing with who? Sharing with other schools? To give examples of Union County Public Schools not supporting, I think, field maintenance. I am aware of several schools doing much of their own maintenance, but that is by their own choosing. So I'm just going to open that question up for discussion.
Sure. Again, thank you, Madam Chair. In this situation, the socioeconomic divide between the east side and the west side was the specific concern. And I think there was a general perception that on one side of town, you have very active PTOs who give a lot of money, and those schools therefore benefit from that, which is, that is what it is. And there was no request that you address that. However, the thought was that if gate sharing existed, where all of the monies from game admissions were put into a pool and then spread across schools, it would help everyone and address some of those inequities. And apparently that does take place in some other districts. I don't know the specifics of that, but that was the thought. And I think with regard to the field maintenance, again, where some schools opt to do their own, I don't know that people realize, and that was another, transparency thing. If the PTO is paying for X school to do it, bully for them, right?
And we have some coaches that won't let anyone else touch their field.
Absolutely. And so unfortunately, though, the appearance could be, oh gosh, their field is so much better than our field, right? Or their uniforms are so much better, or whatever the variable is, the track, right? So the gate sharing would somewhat help to address that, where the PTOs may not have quite the financial foundation that some of the more wealthy schools have.
I got you. Board members, you have any thoughts or input, questions on that one?
Ms. Yvette, most the area that they are referring to is District 1 area, which is the eastern part of the community, which has for a number of years and for quite some time, it has been identified as an area of poverty. And so within our area, we have quite a few challenges where diversity would really benefit us, and making sure that some of these opportunities are afforded to our children and our families. And so I know you said you did not know exactly the area, but it is the Monroe, Wingate, Marshfield area that has, for so many times in so many ways, has been overlooked and experienced disadvantages in so many areas. I just wanted you to know that area. So
And
if you ever find time to look it up.
Reverend Kirkpatrick, I wouldn't say they've been overlooked, because I know that in facilities and finance, and I know you've only been on the board a couple of months, but we do have.
I've been here all my life. I've been here all my life.
Sorry, on the board.
Right. And my response as being overlooked was not just talking about academics. I was talking about overall and so many other challenges. That was a statement, not just dealing with school.
So what I wanted to share with you and everyone is that we do have reports that Shauna McClam can update to show how much funding is going to each cluster and each school. So from a funding point of view, I do want to say that this board, even prior to you joining us, has never overlooked District 1 and actually has made it a #1 priority. I think what I'm hearing Yvette and Christina say is that when you have parent involvement or funds being raised through a PTO or a parent booster club, and those parent-led organizations are able to do so much more financially than other clusters like maybe Parkwood or Piedmont, Forest Hills, or Monroe. I'm hearing that, you know, it's the PTOs and the athletic booster clubs, because we will share with you the report as far as how much money Union County Public Schools actually sends to Monroe and all clusters. We'll make that available.
Madam Chair, I will say this as a parent living here in Monroe, and as I've said many times before, all of my children going to Monroe. The best athletic football field in the county is Monroe. That is the best matter of fact, not only in the county, probably in one of the best in the whole state. And that comes after years of, you know, to Reverend Kirkpatrick's point, Monroe not having, let's say, maybe the best field over there at Walter Pickett, but even then, Walter Pickett is making a rebound and getting utilized to that degree, and it's in District 1. A lot of the problems that occur are problems that occur from parental involvement. Because I was one of those Miss Yvette, I was one of those PTSO parents. And in 2005, there you go. And in 2005, a bunch of us parents got together because the PTSO at Monroe High School, you know, had dwindled. And there was about 5 of them. We tried to recruit as many men as we could, but somehow I wound up being the only guy. In some ways, I'm still the only guy. And we put our feet to the ground. We didn't worry about how many we had. We didn't worry about any of those things. And we were able, after creative thinking, to come up with funding mechanisms to where we did a lot of funding. Because of some things that came in from a couple of administrations ago, I'm talking about presidential administrations, where they cut out a lot of the things that we were able to do. We were given scholarships. We were providing help in a wide variety. So a lot of these problems need to be addressed from the standpoint of parental involvement, and whatever we can do to help there, because irregardless of somebody's social economic status, power of an involved parent trumps a whole lot of stuff. So we get that going, then we can make some headway in some of these areas.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I know that a lot of the work that Mrs. Heintel and Mrs. May have done since they've been on the Board of Education is encouraging PTOs in one area, adopt a PTO in like maybe one of our title schools that doesn't have a PTO. And I think Mrs. Heintel and Mrs. May have been enormous advocates. Even before they were elected to the board, they were encouraging PTOs in their own schools, Cuthbertson, Cata, Wesley Chapel, Sun Valley, to adopt some of our schools in Monroe that didn't have a PTO, and even went above and beyond to help those schools start a PTO and help them get off the ground and fill out their 501c3 paperwork. I just commend Mrs. May and Mrs. Heintel, on their leadership with regards to that. And I just think there needs to be more of it.
I think it's more of we're looking at it more as a partnership with the schools. It helps in many ways. It helps the schools everywhere in any way. So I think it's a great thing. We're trying to get it with Dr. Houlihan, we're trying to get it off the ground again so that we can do it once this virus is behind us. We can start doing some more stuff because it's really beneficial to everybody involved.
I can't wait for this COVID stuff to be over because, I miss our meetings with Bishop Gardine at his church and working with him and his community with tutoring and going to their events and being with the children and the students and seeing what their needs are so that, needs can be met. So, at any rate, PTOs have been identified, and PTOs in affluent schools have been encouraged to adopt PTOs or help get PTOs started in other schools. And if that just wasn't possible, they became the PTO, and provided teacher appreciation meals and, gosh, Kathy, what all have you done? It's been blankets and pajamas and Valentine's Day and Christmas. And again, I think it's communication and getting the word out and encouraging more schools to get involved and do this and get outside of their bubble.
Right. And we're talking more with partnerships about high school students with Read With You and that kind of stuff to get more both sides, to get everybody can benefit from these partnerships.
I love it when Kathy starts, talking to Dr. Houlihan, the need, for our students, our students need volunteer hours, for Beta Club or band or National Honor Society. What better volunteering hours, can you get than to go into your district and volunteer in a school or with a student that needs a mentor or help with math or help with writing papers. So those are kind of the things we're working on, but we're absolutely open to advice, to do more.
Maybe Ms. May can just give some highlight to some of the things that went on at East, just as we conclude this portion, because she's got great stories there.
I'm actually missing an East PTO meeting, which was at the same time as our meeting, but I mean, they're doing great things. They're just getting started with their PTO, so it's the second year. Of course, COVID has made it a lot more difficult to get more parents involved, but I just feel like you get a couple parents involved and then you can just keep bringing more and more in. And so it's been a great experience for me.
And I know you mentioned East, but you and other community members have really helped out Walter Bickett. You've been instrumental at Walter Bickett too, I believe.
We did do a little work there before I was helping at East. And Monroe Middle is actually working on getting their 501, and so they've reached out to East, and Sun Valley helped East get their 501, helped them with the paperwork filing, and now East will be helping Monroe Middle. So I like to pay it forward.
Yeah.
Everybody working together is, the best way
So I
to
think
make
we
all the
just
schools
need to
successful.
really, have conversations, and maybe board members and the superintendent and maybe the directors for elementary, middle, and high. We just need to do a better job at working with our principals and saying, does your PTO need help? Do you even have a PTO? Did your PTO completely fall apart when all the fifth graders graduated or all the eighth graders graduated? And next thing you know, all the parents moved up and there's no PTO.
Right.
So I think, we definitely, this is a conversation that we can have. And
Dr. Houlihan right now is taking the part of talking to the principals and going from there, and we'll know more then. So he's the point person right now.
And I think our directors can too, Topper, McKinnon, Jones, and Baisden. I mean, they could be great leaders and assets to that too. Okay, so leaving that, we have 3 more questions that were submitted. The next one is number 6. Did the committee unanimously approve the recommendations that were sent to the board? I believe there were 3 recommendations. Was that unanimous? Was there a vote, not a vote, or just consensus? If you can talk to us about that.
Madam Chair, I believe that it would be more of consensus. We facilitated this very much from an executive coaching facilitation process where we had buy-in at the end of each session. There was never a person who said, I don't agree with that. It was pretty much consensus.
Okay.
Again, we were very objective and never inserted our own opinions. It was the work of the committee that came up with the recommendations and how they narrowed it down. We used a process called mural, where they spent, each time we got together, including the students, they got an opportunity to run strategy virtually. And as they ran that strategy virtually, they pulled out, we let every single group speak about their strategy. And from there, we crafted recommendations that came out of their own recommendations that they wanted to submit. And it was consensus from where we stood.
And you said that program was called Mural?
Yes.
Like a piece of art, mural?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. It is
Nice.
a
Collaborative.
virtual
I
collaborative
like
that we use every day with our client base that allows us to run strategy. Teachers love it because there's Post-its and stickers and arrows and all different types of things that we could use. And it really, again, it kept the dialogue going. We never met in this format. They did the work. These people showed up and they did the work.
I'm happy to show an example if you all would be interested.
Yes, we did prepare to show you all an example of what that strategy looked like.
I would love to see an example.
Me too.
This is not necessarily, the completed, but just to give you a sense, it's as if you have a great big wall of white paper, like if we were able to get together in person. And through breakout groups, you can see some of the work that took place. So
Wow.
For example, we did a huge brainstorming to identify some of the issues. And these were identified by different groups. So in this particular meeting, we had 4 different groups, group 1, group 2, group 3, and group 4. Some I opted to color code, some did not. That really didn't matter. But then we were able to create themes of pieces that we saw recurring.
And this is their work. They typed
in the
this.
4 groups.
This is their work. They were in breakout groups. The breakout groups, we have the technology to allow breakout groups to craft and chart and document their own findings. And so this was not us putting down the information. This is data. And in any time you're running strategy or facilitating, you have to get a baseline. This is the baseline of data that was collected from us as it relates to as they went through this. And when they finished the activity, each group had an opportunity to have their own spokesperson share their findings through their own efforts of collaboration. We also did the similar work with the children. Once we got all that information, we then had the children come on and share with the adults their finding. And in many cases, that collaboration proved to be very in sync with what we heard from the adults. And so this wasn't a cast the first stone type thing. It wasn't a casting of the stone. It was just them giving information based on their lens, where they sit in their viewpoint. And we collected that data. And then they made a decision on what are the top 3 areas. We knew we couldn't give everything. What are the top 3 areas that you all want to walk away and present as information?
Very nice. I like that.
And this collaboration, Madam Chair, went on every single time we met. We did very little chatting in a sense of not being strategic. We kept them engaged for the entire time and duration that they were with us. And of course, Dr. Strickland witnessed much of this, as she was also a part of those conversations and collaboration. I wasn't in her group per se,
Gotcha.
so I don't know. I can't speak to what if she participated or if she simply let it organically happen. As facilitator, my role is, and Yvette's role is to lead and let a conversation organically take on its own characteristics. That is the nature of coaching through facilitation. And as executive coaches, that's kind of how we led that process.
I really like those murals very, very much. I honestly think it would benefit the board to I don't know if you can email those or whatever, but
get you a PDF of that. Absolutely.
Yeah, I would love to read through it just to make sure we don't miss something.
And I think, Madam President, this is the whole purpose of what, to your point, being able to share this at this level. You know, there's no way we would have been able to show this in a board meeting. This particular exercise here is a tool that we have. We have a ton of facilitation tools. This particular tool is called Cover Story. This allows us to start the conversation, where if you were going to see Union County Schools on the front page of the paper in the next 10 years as it results to diversity, equity, and inclusion, what would it look like to you? We took them on a fun opportunity, let them go in the rooms and do this work on their own, and they came up with this. Once you get a group to run strategy and to brainstorm with that particular thinking hat on, then you come back, you start at the end, and then you come to the, and then you move forward. And that was the whole purpose of this for us, that from the beginning, this was like one of the first exercises after we did the trust, was to help us understand, what are they trying to achieve? Where would they like to go? What do they see now or don't see now that they'd like to see? And what do they see now that they don't want to see in 5 years? And so this is where we started. We started a very clean sheet of paper. And out of that, these things came out. But you'll see, and you look at the things that they said, I'm very proud of the progress the school system that UCPS has evolved into. These are things that.
I'm so sorry, Christina. I just want to make one point, that the key thing about this is that this was one from the students. The students came up with this one in terms of what they want to see as UCPS alumni, right? By the time the cover story would be on the shelves.
When we talk about living in a world of process improvement, processes can always be improved. I think that's the spirit of where this conversation came from. I will continue to say that this committee cares about this district, and not one time did they show up in any manner of hostility. They are proud to live in Union County. They are proud of Union County schools. That was exhibited in their behavior as well as their participation. There were times we had to shoo them off the call at night. Okay, you all, it's time to go. You guys got to go, because they were committed to what I would frame as process improvement. And I think any good organization should have some type of Lean Six Sigma type of process improvement, so that over time, our organization, as we scale, that we could continue to do better in whatever areas are outlined and that are identified by not only our stakeholders, our communities, but internal employees and our board. And that's kind of the spirit, Madam Chair, that those exercises were done in.
I would love for you to send those to our board, or have Dr. Strickland send it to our board. Because when we're trying to think of creative ways to take this final report and recommendations and run with it, I mean, I immediately had a lot of ideas just looking at some of those comments, and I know other board members would as well, and Dr. Houlihan and his team. So that's really awesome. I'm glad you showed that to us, Yvette. Thank you.
And you know, those are the kinds of, and we do have the technology for that to have been showed at the board meeting. And that those kinds of lead-ins coming from you all would have created a good gateway for the furtherance of conversation that night. So, but thank you for at least us seeing it now. But that's what I meant about the facilitators leading the way, and you know that's great work. I mean, that's pretty good.
Thank you, Mr. Benchin. I do want to reiterate, Mr. Benchin, some of this was just a form of miscommunication. We do this work for a living. And so I think that this was a form of miscommunication on some of the things that were shared with us. And so I want to make it very clear that we're not an organization that just was fly by night and did not do our due diligence at the board meeting.
And I
just think there was some level of miscommunication. I just want to make sure, because I know we put our heart into this effort, and we wanted to make sure that we honored you as a board member, that we honored your district, that we honored your students, and that we honored the people who were on the committee. And I could tell you our 100% heart was there. And I wasn't at the board meeting because my mother is 87 with dementia, and she fell and broke her wrist. And so I made I guess a parental decision, because now I'm serving as her parent, that I needed to be home and taking care of someone who couldn't take care of herself. So Yvette attended and was told that she needed to be in the back until she was called upon. I just want to set that record straight, because no way do I want it to appear that
I know those words didn't come from me, because I would have
not
never
stay in the back in a bad way, but
Yeah.
that she was ushered to the overflow, that only the people who were speaking. And so I just want to be very clear so that it doesn't appear that our heart wasn't 100% engaged in the process. I think it's just a form of miscommunication.
Let me apologize, Madam Chair, before you speak, and we always want to hear what you have to say. I'm apologizing, Ms. Christina, from the standpoint that please don't perceive what I just said as a negative about that. I was just using that to say how much better that would have been to start the conversation.
Absolutely, I agree with
that
you 100%.
night. Not that, you know, this is what you should have done. As the chair said early on, we're here. You know, if I can act the way she said it, you would have heard, we're here now. I hope I did you well, Melissa. I got to practice
I'll take
that.
it.
But no, that was not that. I was just simply saying how good I felt seeing that. And had that been what was laid out on that night, you know, we would have had a whole nother processes of receiving the report.
Absolutely.
Because I think
that I agree with.
And so I think today what has happened is that we flushed out that night. We flushed it out, or we're flushing it out, and now we're hearing. So in a world, we've had a do-over, whether we ask for one or not, but we literally got a do-over, and we're hearing from you all, and it's extremely positive. But I just want my good friend Reverend Kilpatrick to know that I've not forgotten what his concerns are, and I do want to make sure that we, answer those questions that he has. And I think we've gone a long way tonight in doing that, and with some of the things that we've pointed out. Because how many people knew of the work that Kathy and Sarah have been doing? How many people knew about that? You see, there's a lot of people working, and they ain't looking for credit. They're just working. And so that's all I meant by that, was to say that was such a beautiful thing that Yvette just showed us. And I could just imagine the world seeing that freshly on that night, how that would have changed perspectives of that night.
And
Thank
just
you.
to
Thank you,
kind of
Mr.
wrap up what Reverend Benson just said, even though I went into this thinking that we would model this right, exactly the way we modeled Citizens Advisory Committee on Realignment, I'm completely okay with how everything has gone. The community members were given the opportunity to meet over spring break. Some could be there, some couldn't. But I know Maxie Johnson and others, put a lot of time and energy into that presentation. And we had an opportunity to hear from them, to hear from the student, to hear from one of our students, to hear from one of our administrators, to hear from one of our community members, from one of our employees. I don't regret this, the way this has worked out at all, because I feel like at the April meeting, we got one-on-one time hearing from committee members. Today, we get to hear uninterrupted time with our facilitator who has these expertise. And I just want to remind everyone that multiple people applied for this job. And those applications and resumes went through SPIT. Excuse me, I'm not supposed to say that anymore. Strategic planning. And the committee looked at the facilitators that applied to do this hard work. And the committee selected Christina and Yvette. Your resume and your application speaks volumes for your expertise in wanting to take on this type of work. So we're here with you tonight, and I think the water would have gotten very muddy if we had had 30 or 40 committee members and our consultant. I don't know if I would have been able to juggle committee comments from facilitator comments, because for me, I wanted your undivided attention to share what you learned based on your expertise in this field, and to give our board some words of wisdom on how we move forward. And so I think tonight is absolutely perfect on how we move forward.
Thank you.
And your credentials absolutely speak for themselves. And you said you were honored. I think strategic planning and this board, we're honored to have your services and to have this one-on-one time with you to kind of wrap this package up and know where do we go from here based on your professional expertise. So we have 2 more questions.
Wait, Melissa, we already took care of 7 earlier when we combined it with number 2, so we can go to number 8.
Okay, so the final question that was submitted for tonight's discussion is, One of the key findings from the committee is that the district policies have not served all students equitably. I note that the presentation refers later to disciplinary policies. Can you give other examples of specific policies that the committee was referring to,
And I
other
think
than discipline?
Right, and I think we talked about this a little bit earlier, that every time we have a policy committee meeting and we go through policies, we have to use the lens of DEI to go through it. So I think that that is something, but if there's something more specific, Christina or Yvette, I would like to hear it, but I think we heard the answer to this earlier.
Ms. Hightail, you hit it spot on.
I agree.
I think you hit it spot on. Let me just say this from a change management perspective. Much of the work that is done by diversity, equity, and inclusion professionals is really just starting conversation to be able to unearth things that are unknown. And I think that you all have done a beautiful job tonight on your side, being able to share some of those things that were unknown. And we've been able now to on both sides unearth that. And I think that you hit it spot on. That is just really looking through the lens of diversity. So thank you for sharing that. You're absolutely right.
Thank you.
So, each chair for each committee, I would just challenge you to go back to your committees and just always, keep this, at the forefront each month, with our, different agenda items that come up, whether it's policy, curriculum, finance, facilities, or strategic planning, technology, and transportation. I challenge all of us, but especially the chairs and staff over each one of those committees that this always, be part of it, part of the conversation. And for our parents and our students and our employees to know that this is an exercise that we went into with Christina and Yvette, to figure out, what can we do better? And clearly communication is one of them, and letting people know, what we're working on, and and to not be fearful to speak up. I told my boys growing up, if you don't understand that algebra, you better raise your hand and ask, because when you get home, mama might not be able to help you with it. And so, people need to be encouraged and need to have an understanding that it's okay to raise your hand and ask a question. And I just want to say, if you live in Union County, and if you're in Union County Public Schools, by all means, reach out to your board, reach out to your principal, reach out to your teacher, reach out to your assistant principal, your guidance counselor. We have resources. And if we don't have resources, we'll go get the resources. And find the answers that our community members need. I mean, I had a parent from a charter school contact me today with a question, and we don't oversee charter schools, but I was more than happy to point her in the right. She lives in Union County and she's got kids, so I gave her the information that I knew, but I told her she needed to verify it with her school. So I just share that with saying there is not one question that I don't think our nine-member board would not be excited to help anyone answer and find solutions.
Thank you. Madam Chair, I don't know what our next step is, but I do want to just say this publicly, that because Yvette and I do this work, I want to thank this board. I want to thank the school board. I want to thank this fine superintendent, because only people who champion this work are serious about it, and you all championed it. I think that that is a very clear indicator of where you all lie. We may not have all the answers and all the tools of how to fix it, but the fact that we're willing to have the conversation says so much about your district. You all have so much to be proud of, in addition to the great test scores and your standings academically in the state. I just want to commend you all, because for every organization that does this, there's about 200 or 300 that don't.
Right.
And so you all deserve the badge of honor tonight. You're the real heroes, not Yvette and I. You all and the committee and the leader of this ship, which is your board chair, your fellow board members, as well as your superintendent and all of his cabinet staff. So I just want to say on behalf of our organization, I want to thank you. Thank you for the tough conversations, but I also want to thank you for the conversations that were easy to swallow. So thank you.
Thank you for facilitating for us. I want to thank all of our community members. We had so many that applied to serve on this committee, but at the end of the day, we did approve one community member from each of our 9 clusters. So we had 9 community members, 3 faith-based community members. I believe we had 14 students, 1 administrator or principal, and we had about 8 employees, and so many more that applied that genuinely wanted to serve. And I just want to thank all of those that did see this committee through, and all of the meetings that they attended and all the information that they provided. So to our Citizens Advisory Committee on Diversity, please know how much we thank you for your time and your input. And for Christina and Yvette, I just, we just want you to move to Union County so that we can have you to ourselves.
I wish I had have done that had I known how high I pay taxes in the county that I live in. I won't mention the county, but
we brought that to your attention to bring you on over.
You all have. I would have loved to have been there, and I know that you all have some great schools as well.
But so I just want you to know how much we value and appreciate the services that you provided for us.
Thank you.
And I hope this is not the last time we meet with you and see you, because when you go through something as heart-wrenching and emotional and all of those energies with this type of subject, we don't want to let you go. But we just value you, and we thank you for how you helped our committee without any board involvement, without any meddling, or the board trying to dictate one way or the other, and just allowing you to do your job. So thank you, and thank you for your time. Please, I hope this will not be our last meeting. And I want to end where we started, and where this all started for me and other board members were that students a year ago felt like their only outlet was to go to Instagram and share, their experiences in Union County Public Schools, and it broke our hearts. To see what some of our students had experienced in our, we're over here saying, yay, UCPS, we're such a great school district, look at our ACTs, SATs, EOGs, EOCs, numbers. But then you see those Instagram posts, and we're like, whoa, we can do better. We can do better than numbers, so that's where it began. And I just hope every student knows today that they have a board and a superintendent and a school district that they can go to. I know that social media is the love language of teenagers. I have to. And so, and that's fine. That's fine. I know that that is a great outlet for young people. But in order to have change and improvement, the school district needs to be notified, and never be afraid to raise your hand and call it out, and contact your elected officials and say, this is not right. I need your help. We need solutions. And so we began with Instagram. I just want to end with that tonight in thanking everyone for their time, and just saying, if there's anything we've learned in the since last October, is that if you contact your board and your superintendent, we're going to have a conversation, and we're going to try to find the answers to your problems. So, and communication until we get it fixed. So, would anyone else like to say anything in closing?
Real quick, Madam Chair, and the noise you hear is I'm at the church. The preacher's supposed to be out front, but I can hold on a few more minutes. I just want the committee to know specifically that if they have any concerns, they, like any other citizen, can reach out to any board member. I just want that nailed down. And for the committee members that feel as though there's still some more they have to share, please share it. We want to hear it, and we want to get to the crux of their questions, and of course any that Reverend Kilpatrick has. We want to solve this.
Absolutely.
And we're with you, Reverend Kilpatrick. We feel you, sir.
And political parties should never prevent someone who has a need or sees a need and doesn't reach out to your elected officials regardless, because, you know, the 9 people here that are elected officials, we're here to serve 42,000 students. We don't care about anything else other than those students, our employees, and their parents, and their grandparents, and everyone else. Otherwise, there is no need for an elected official if you do not feel like you can reach out to your elected official to represent you in your time of need. So that's something that we need to work on to let everyone know. You know, we are here not for District 1. I'm in District 4, District 5, 6, 7, at large. Once you're in this seat, you're not here for only your district. You're here for all 9 clusters and all 42,000 students.
Absolutely. If I may say, Madam Chair, again, I appreciate this dialogue and this conversation tonight. And I agree with you 100%. Even though I've been elected for District 1, I've had conversations from parents and students who are in the Sun Valley area, as well as the Poplar Tent area as well. So I understand that we are all here for all children. And today has been very enlightening. As mentioned to you, Miss Yvette, when I made the statement in regards to our district, I've been here all of my life. And so I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly of Union County. I went away and came back. And so a lot of our challenges and the challenges that we face in this area, it's not just academic challenges, but there are other challenges as well. And so I believe that when we are able to, again, be transparent, as Madam Chair said, and to be honest and really see that there are some things that need to be improved in spite of how challenging it may be to see the change. My expressions tonight is not from any side conversations from a group of individuals. No one has coached me tonight. I want to make that plain, not saying that anyone has indicated that, but I wanted to make that statement tonight. But my concerns are from what I have seen and what I know. And so again, thank you guys so much for just allowing us to hear. I'm speaking for myself, but I believe all of us have the same sentiments that I believe that we all have the heart of our community. I believe that, as I said a couple of weeks ago, we all see differently. Just because I may not have 20/20 vision doesn't mean I can't see. And so what I see may not be what you may see. And how I see it, sometimes a person may never understand how I see what I see. But again, I appreciate you all, Miss Christina and Miss Yvette, and your work has not been in vain, and the committee's work has not been in vain. They have worked hard. Some of them did not know about this meeting tonight at 5, but they found out, and so I hope that they have been on listening and hearing and observing and knowing that. I think it was Sam Cooke, maybe he said change is gonna come. Is that right, Reverend Benson? He said that?
Yeah.
That's not in my time area. I just heard my daddy playing it every now and then, but the song is accurate, and I believe that change is gonna come. So again, I appreciate you all so very much for what you all have done tonight. Thank you.
Miss Christina and Miss Yvette, that's the inside joke. I look 15, but I'm climbing towards 70.
As I said, just because my vision may not be 20/20 don't mean I can't see. So
Any other board comments? Ms. Hindell?
No,
Okay. I will accept a motion to adjourn.
that was what I was doing. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 Thank you.
So much, everyone. Please take care.
I gotta go.